Welcome to this video, and I hope you are following this JavaScript playlist. If you're not sure or if you don't know what this playlist is, be sure to head over to the description to get the link to this playlist. So this is a complete playlist that has complete JavaScript course. Okay, so I'm covering JavaScript from scratch for beginners, and we are moving towards advanced concepts as well. Now, there are quite a few videos that I've recorded and are being edited right now. Okay, I've not uploaded them yet. Okay, but there is a lot of work done over here. Okay, and you'll see a lot of videos being added to this playlist. All right. Now, what are we going to cover in this video? So, in this particular video, we are going to talk about some advanced concepts in JavaScript. So, we are going to talk about closures. Okay, what they are, how you can make use of them, spread operator, rest operator. That is what we are going to cover. We're going to cover how you can destructure arrays and how does destructuring works with objects. Okay, so destructuring, let me tell you, is a wonderful concept, and you'll realize how easy it is. And this is one of the obvious syntax that is being used everywhere if you Google and read some code about JavaScript. Okay, so it's really important that you understand how it works. We'll also talk about modules in JavaScript. Okay, and we'll go hands-on with all of these concepts. And like all the other videos, like this video will also have simple examples. The lectures will be hands-on, goes without saying. That's my style, right? Now, if you're liking this content or whatever I'm bringing into this channel, be sure to subscribe and like the video and also share it to show your support. If you share it, feel free to tag me wherever you're sharing it on LinkedIn or anywhere. Okay, I would love to see the tag and I would love to comment on it. Okay. Also, if you have enrolled into this course, be sure to comment below and let me know whether you have enrolled or not. All right. Now, without a further ado, let's jump right in. So now it's time that we start talking about closures and understand what are they. All right. Now, to put the definition simply, closures allow a function to access variables from its outer enclosing function's scope. All right. So let me explain what I mean over here. Okay. So let me first do something without a closure, and then we'll graduate to what closures are, because that will help us understand the need as well. All right. So let us say I have a counter over here. So let's say I say int let count. I set it to 0. Okay, and I'm doing count plus plus. Okay, I can log the value of count over here. Okay, this is pretty simple. You'll see 1 over here. Okay, now I want to increment this counter again and again. So what I would do is, the next thing I can do over here is I can have this entire thing in a function, right? And I can say increment count, something like this. Okay, and I'll move this increment part inside over here. Okay, and whenever I want to increment, what I will do is I'll say increment counter, something like this. Okay, and the number of times I increment, you'll see things being incremented those many times. So it's 2 now because I've incremented twice, and I'm going to do this, and I'm able to do this, I should say, because of this function, right? Now the thing over here is, if I move this inside, let's say I don't want count to be outside because it's then being accessible by everyone, right? So if I have count over here, I can have someone modify the count in my code over here like this, right? So this can happen, right? You can see. So count, you'll see 1000, right? This is not good. I don't want this to happen. So what I would do is I would move this declaration inside this particular function. Now the problem is, once I move this declaration inside, I'm not able to access it from outside, which means like I have to move the console log also inside over here. Okay, and this is how things will function. Okay, you can see. But even if I move it inside, you are seeing like I incremented 10 times. Okay, it is not just preserving the value, it is like having a fresh declaration all the time, right? And this is not good. I want to have a counter in JavaScript with the objective of privacy also being met. So this is where closures come into picture. So closure allows you to encapsulate variables and its surrounding, right? And you can use that for your use. Okay. So right now what we have seen is a couple of things. Okay. We've identified a problem where the count did not persist because the value of count is being reset for every call over here, right? So you're calling increment count over here. You can see the value is not persisting across the calls, right? So every time you're getting 1. Okay. Solution to fix this is you might move this to outer scope over here, count. But the problem is then anyone can modify it like this over here, right? So these are the couple of problems that we have right now. Now what I would do is I would encapsulate the count in a closure to solve those both persistence and the accidental modification issue. Okay, to give you a flavor of how privacy can be implemented with the help of closure. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I am going to so let me comment this out. Okay, and let me come over here. Okay, so I'll have a function first of all. I'll call this as create counter. Okay, you can call this whatever you want to. Okay, but I'm calling it create counter with no parameters. I'll create count over here. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to have a function inside this function. It's an inner function that has access to the outer functions variable over here. Okay, so I'm going to say function over here. I'm going to say increment count, something like this. And over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say count plus plus, and then I'm going to say log over here, something like this. And I'm going to say count, something like this. Okay, so this is done. We don't have any output yet over here after saving the file because we are not calling this yet, right? Now, after creating this function, what I would also do is I would return the inner function. Okay. Sorry, not inner function, it's increment count over here. Okay, but this is an inner function because it's a function inside a function, right? So here, now, how will we use it? So I'll just call this. Okay. So first, I'm going to say let counter is equal to create counter. Okay. So we're calling this and we have counter now over here. So I can say counter. This is holding the reference to increment count, right? So what are we returning from here? We are returning increment count function, which is an inner function. So when you call create counter and you are assigning it to a counter variable, this counter variable is actually holding the reference to increment count, right? So you can call counter over here. So if you call counter, you'll see 1, right? Let me call it again and let me show you a magic. You can see 2, right? You can see 3. Okay. So what is happening over here is basically we have moved count inside the create counter function. The moment we do this, the moment we move count variable inside this create counter, it becomes private to this particular function and variable count is no longer accessible from outside. Okay, so if I try to say over here count, okay, is equal to 1000 over here, and if I say console.log over here, and if I say count, I see 1000 being printed. But if I call counter again, something like this, you'll see it's 4. So this value change or this thing is not impacting this counter that we have over here. Okay, so actually we are encapsulating count inside this function over here. Okay, so that it cannot be directly accidentally modified outside this. Okay, also you will notice that in a function over here, increment count forms a closure. So this entire phenomena is known as closure that remembers the environment in which it was created. So this function remembers the environment in which it was created. So this is the environment in which it was created. Okay, so if you have more variables over here, it is going to remember that. Okay, so even after create counter has finished executing on this line over here, okay, the count variable is preserved because of this counter. You can see, and this counter actually it's actually a closure over here. Okay, and only way to modify or access count is through this function now, which is returned by the create counter function, and this ensures that the variable is only manipulated in the intended way. So you have a controlled access now. I hope this is making sense. Okay, so this is actually an example of closure. Okay, and the inner function that you have over here function increment count is a closure. It's an example of closure because it is being returned along with its lexical scope. Lexical scope meaning surrounding scope over here in JavaScript. Okay, so surrounding scope is this, and it is returned with its lexical scope so that you can use it over here outside the function. Okay, now this is one counters you have created. Right now, this is so powerful. You can have multiple counters being created. Okay, so for example, this is counter. Okay, I'll call this counter 1, for example. This is counter 1. Nothing changes for us, right? Let me create a counter 2. So let's say I decide to create counter 2 over here. Okay, I'll name this counter 2. I can say counter 2 over here. Okay, something like this, and you'll see counter 2 has a value of 1. So this is independent. Okay, so this is the power of closure, wherein you can create multiple independent counters using the closure based approach. All right, so what we have done now is we have encapsulated count, like I said, in a closure to solve both issues like the persistence and the accidental modification, providing data privacy and controlled access. So this thing has controlled access. Nobody can accidentally modify this. And yeah, this is the power of closure that allows you to create multiple independent instances. Now here we are just returning a single function, right? You can have multiple functions as well. Okay, so let me add a comment over here. Closure example, something like this. Okay, and let me copy this entire thing until here maybe. Okay, or here maybe. Okay, and I'll just comment this out. Okay, and I'll have this code as well. Okay, multiple functions. Okay, now what you can do over here is I'll modify this example. It's the same example that I copy pasted so that we have the previous version of the example as well. Okay, now here I have function increment count. I can duplicate this. I can have one more function. I can say get count over here. Okay, and this can simply return the count. Okay, it's just used for getting the count. Now I want this also to be accessible, so I can have a colon, not colon, a curly brace, and I can return both over here. Okay, and then over here, if you save this, you'll start getting errors, right? Because you have multiple functions. Okay, so what I would do is I'll get rid of this, Okay, now to access increment count, you'll have to say counter 1 dot get count. Okay, so you're getting the count now. Okay, you can say counter 1 dot increment count, something like this. You can save, you'll see 1. Okay, let's move this get count below. Okay, so you can see how this is working now. All right, so we are just seeing one output over here. The reason is this is just returning the count, right? It's not printing it. So in order to get this printed, we'll have to make use of console log over here. Oops, so I'll say console dot log. Okay, something like this, and I'll get this printed. Okay, you can see 1 1 over here. Okay, so what we did over here essentially is by adding 2 functions, we've created 2 closures. Okay, so they both are closures, and we are making use of them over here in the code where we are calling here. And the context that is being used to create this is this. So within the create counter, whatever scope you have, that is what is being used to create this closure. So there are 2 closures over here. Okay, and you can create multiple instances of each and you can use it. So here we have, I've given an example of counter 1. You can have an example of counter 2 like this. Counter 2. This is counter 2, and you'll see 1 1 being printed. Now if I increment counter 1 twice over here, for example, okay, let's say I increment this twice, you'll see 1 2 2. Okay, this is being executed, and then you have 2 and this. Okay, so 1 1 basically, because we are calling the second object over here. All right, so this is how closures work. Now closures can also be used for creating something called as function factories. Okay, so function factories. Okay, now what are function factories? Function factories are functions that generate other functions. Let me give you an example. So let's say I have this function. I'll say create greetings, create greeting. Okay, I'll have greeting over here. Okay, oops. So I'll say greeting here. Okay, and over here I'll say return function. I'm returning a function over here. Okay, what is the name? Okay, I don't need a name of the function over here. And here, let's say I can add a name. Okay, and I can say log. So log greeting. Okay, and this will be okay, and I'll add name over here, something like this. Okay, and then it will be like this. Okay, so I've created greeting here. Okay, now how would I use it? So I would say hello over here. Let's say hello, create greeting, and I'll say hello over here. Okay, so if you run this, okay, and if I say hello, and if I say Alice, right? So I have to pass in a name, right? So when you say create greeting, hello over here, you can see I'm creating a hello greeting over here. So hello went over here, hello, and then I have this function that is being returned. Okay, the function is accepting name. So whatever greeting I've passed, I can pass in name when making use of it. So if I say hello Alice, it will say hello Alice. Understood? So if I can now greet multiple people using this, okay, instead of Alice, I can say John, hello John. You can see. So here, this is a function factory which is being used to create a function. Okay, how it worked? So you have this function that is being returned, right? So you have name, and greeting is coming in from this. Okay, so you are saying, so whenever you're saying create greeting hello, this is being created with hello as a parameter. Sorry, hello over here, not as a parameter, but hello over here in the log statement. And then when you call say hello, this function is being called with whatever name you are passing in. Okay, now you can create one more like this. Okay, so I want to say hello, I can say goodbye, something like this, and here I can say goodbye, like so. Okay, and I'll copy this, so it will wish goodbye to both these users. Okay, if I save this, you can see hello Alice, hello John, hello Alice, oh sorry, goodbye Alice, goodbye John, right? So we are making use of closures over here to implement something called as function factories, right? And this is one of the use cases wherein closures can be used. All right, so closures is a function that remembers its surrounding environment or scope. Okay, so whenever you are returning a function this way, it is having access to its entire scope, right, over here in which it is created, right? And then you can make use of it. So we have seen different examples of closure, and I hope this was useful. So now it's time that we begin talking about the spread operator. Now, what is a spread operator? So spread operator is an operator that looks something like this, the one with 3 dots in JavaScript. What does it do? It is used to expand the elements of iterable type like arrays, strings, or properties of objects into individual elements or properties. That is what spread operator does. All right. Now let me give you an example over here. Okay. So let's say I have an array over here. Okay. So I can say original array over here, something like this. Okay. And I have it 1, 2, 3 elements over here. Okay. And let's say I want to access this. Okay, so I can say console.log. I can say original array over here. Okay, now if I want to access, wait a minute, let me get the output of original array. You can see this. But if you want to get the output like one element, you can access it this way, right? Now, if you want to create another array, what you need to do is you need to access individual elements like this and copy it into the original array. Okay, but what spread operator would do is, okay, you don't need this kind of a syntax, but instead you can just make use of spread operator like this, and you can say save. So you'll see it just spreads the element, it just unpacks the element from its original form into individual elements. So this is what the original output was. You can see. Okay, and now it's just the individual elements over here. Okay, you can even take this and assign this over here to a copied array. You can say copied array, that's what I'll call it. Okay, you can do something like this over here. Okay, and you need to add this into square braces. Okay, something like this, and then you can to console log on copied array. Okay, you can see the array is duplicated, which means it's copied into all the elements are copied. So this is actually a copied array. So this spread operator is actually used to unpack elements. Okay, you can think of like opening a box and removing individual elements or individual items in the box into separate things. That is what it does. Okay, now it can also be used with functions. Okay, so let's say I have a math function. Math is math in JavaScript over here. Math is not a function. Okay, but math actually has a lot of methods inside it. Okay, so here you can say max, and you have 1, 2. Oops. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, 5. That is what I've added. Okay. Now this will give you the max. Okay, so I can say console.log over here, something like this, like so. So you get 5, right? Now if I say original array over here, okay, instead of this, if I add original array, you won't get any output. You will get not a number, right? Because you're passing in array and not the list of elements. So in order to add list of elements, you can make use of spread operator, and you will get 3 over here, right? So you can see 1 out of 1, 2, 3. 3 is the largest. Okay, so this is how useful it is. Now it just does not work with array over here. So if I have a string, okay, so I can create a string called my string, and I can say hello, right? Now I can say console log, and I can say my string. You'll see hello being printed. Now you can make use of spread operator. You can say 3 dots. Oops, I accidentally placed my cursor at the wrong place, and if you do this, you'll see you have individual elements over here. Now you can collect this into an array as well. Okay, so if you don't want to do this, you can collect this into an array. So you can say let string array over here. Okay, and you can have 3 dots in this. Oops. So this you can do. Okay, and then you can have a log over here, and you can say string array, like so, right? So you can see it's converted into an array. So basically the elements of the string are unpacked over here, right? So this is what it does. So yeah, it can be used with normal arrays. It can be used with strings. It can even be used with functions over here. So you can use this to pass array as an argument, and you can unpack it into individual elements. That is also something you can do. You can merge 2 arrays. Okay, so let's say I have one array over here, original array. I have my string over here, right? 2 arrays I have. So I'll say merged arrays over here. Okay, how will I create this merged array? So I'll say spread. What is the name of the original array? It's original array. Okay, so I'll add this over here, and then I'll add spread operator again, and I can say my string, right? Or you can say string array also over here, something like this. Okay, you can add console log over here, and you can say merged array, like so. You'll see 1, 2, 3 and hello together merged into a single array. Imagine without this operator how cumbersome it would have been to combine these two, right? So you can do this if you have any sort of function. Okay, so let me create a function. So let's say you have this function called sum, okay, which accepts let's say a comma b comma c, something like this. Okay, so there's a problem here, sum. Now I can say return a plus b plus c, something like this. Okay, all right, now this is a function. Okay, I'm passing in 3 elements. Okay, what I can do is I can say sum, okay, and I can pass in original array here, something like this. Okay, so it will unpack this into this array over here. Okay, so it will unpack this into individual elements. Okay, so you can see 6 is the output. Okay, and what is original array? It has values like 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's adding 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is resulting in 6 over here. Okay, this spread operator is also being used to work with objects. Okay, so let's say I have object 1 over here. Okay, name colon, I'll say let's say the name I want to have is Alice. Okay, and I have her age as 25, for example. Okay, I'll quickly have a second object over here, okay, called object2. Okay, I'll have, instead of name, I'll have job, and job can be, let's say she's an engineer, and instead of this, I'll have city over here, and the city is New York, like so. Okay, now what you would do over here is you can create let's say merged object over here. Okay, and you can say, so you can destructure this. You can say object1 comma 3 dots object2, something like this. Okay, and you can log this. Okay, so you'll have merged object. You can see name Alice, age 25, job is engineer, city is New York, right? So it's the merged object. So it is also being used to create or unpack an object also. Okay, now if you want to see what is the output of unpacking, okay, so I'll unpack object1 here. Okay, so you can see this did not work. Okay, I need to add something like this over here. But this does not make sense. Okay, this is what we are trying to do over here, because it will still return an object, right? So this is not right. But over here, you'll see like how we made use of this over here, okay, to unpack the objects. All right. So yeah, this is what spread operator is, and these are the different use cases. Okay. So spread operator, like I said, it is represented using these 3 dots, and it is used to expand the elements of an iterable. It can be anything like arrays, strings, objects, not objectives, properties of objects into individual elements or properties. All right. So I hope this was useful. So now it's time that we begin talking about the REST operator. Now the REST operator, as you can see the syntax over here, it is used to collect multiple values into a single variable. We'll understand what that means. So let's say over here you have a function. Okay, let me take an example of function. This function is used to add numbers. Okay, oops. So then we have parameters over here. So I can have num1, okay, num2, right? And what this is going to do is this is going to return, okay, num1 plus num2. Simple, right? Now it's pretty straightforward that if I wish to get the addition of 2 numbers and print it onto the console, I'll have to call sum over here, and I'll have to pass in 2 numbers. If I save this, I see 5 as the output. You can see over here. All right. Now the thing is, if I want to add one more parameter over here, I'll have to add one more parameter here as well, right? So I'll have to say num3, and I'll have to make sure that this comes over here. Okay, so now you have 9 over here, right? Now what I wish to do is, I don't know the number of arguments that I'm going to get. Okay, so I want to keep this as variable. So what I can do is I can have 3 dots, which is the REST operator over here. I can say I'm accepting numbers, okay, and then instead of making use of something like this, num1 plus num2 plus num3, I'm going to have a total over here, which I'll initialize to 0. And then with the help of a for loop, I'm going to say for, okay, const num of numbers. Okay, so I'm going through the numbers over here, and I'm going to say total plus equal to, shorthand version of saying total is equal to total plus num. Okay, something like this. And then I can return total over here, like so. Okay, now instead of calling sum this way, okay, we don't need to change. Actually, we should see the same output. You can see 9 over here. Okay, now I can duplicate this. I can have n number of arguments passed over here. You can see. If I save this, you'll see 48 printed over here. Okay, so what this does is, this is known as the REST operator. If used this way, it is used to collect multiple values into a single variable. So I'm passing in multiple values, and you're collecting it into a single variable. Okay, and this is helpful when working with variable number of arguments, right? So I hope this is making sense, right? So this is what the REST operator is. Now, REST operators can also be used with arrays, all right? So let me come over here. Okay, I can say arrays over here, all right? Now, let us say I have an array over here of fruits, all right? Let's take an example of fruits. I have apple over here, okay? Oops. I have, let's say, banana, okay? I have cherry, something like this. I have, I'll add a couple of more. So I'll say date and I'll say fig over here, okay? So I have this list over here, okay? This is fruits, okay? Now, what I would want to do is, okay, let's say I'll have, I wish to have these two elements, okay, like apple assigned to a variable, banana assigned to a variable, and the rest of the elements assigned to a separate array. So I want to actually divide this list into, this should be into one variable, this should be into another, and the rest should be into an array. How would I do this? Okay, so there is one simple way of doing it with the help of this REST operator. Okay, so what I'm going to show you a syntax. I'll say let over here, okay? So let, I'll say something like this. I'll say first, second, I'll say rest of fruits. All right. Now let me show you the magic over here. So I'm going to say equal to, and I'm going to just assign fruits, something like this. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm creating first, which will have apple. I'm creating second, which will have banana. These two are variables, and then the rest of the elements are collected over here. Okay, so let me show how this is printed. Okay, so I have first over here. Okay, first, and I'll say, oops, so I'll say first, something like this. Okay, what is there in first? You'll see first apple, right? Which means that this first variable has apple. Okay, I'll duplicate this over here. All right, and now instead of first, I'm going to have second, and I can have second over here, like so. If I save this, you'll see second banana. Okay, and here I can have rest. All right, so I can say rest of fruits. If I save this, you will see rest, cherry, date, and fig. All right. So to reiterate, what happened is apple was assigned over here to first, banana was assigned to second, and the rest of the elements were collected over here with the help of this REST operator over here. Okay. So that is how this worked. Okay. So this actually is collected as an array. So rest of the fruits is collected as an array. Okay. So this is how it can work with arrays over here. You can even get it to work with objects, I would say. Okay, so let me create an object over here. Okay, so I'll say let person over here. Okay, and you have name. I'll say Alice over here, something like this. You have age. This is 25, and this is city over here, New York. Okay. Something like this. Okay, so this is an object, right? Now what I can do is I can say let over here. I can have name and rest of person, something like this, collected over here. So I can say person. Okay, so what would happen over here is if you say console.log over here, and if you print in name, what do you think will come? The name, which is Alice. You can see. If I to console log, and if I say rest of, okay, not fruit, rest of person. If I save this, you will see age, city is New York, right? So you're actually destructuring the objects, okay, using the this spread operator, rest operator over here. Okay, rest. So yeah, this is what you are doing over here, and I hope you are clear as to how this is working. So you can even make use of rest operator with spread operator. Let me show that to you. Okay, so let's say I have a function over here which is showing names. All right, let's say I can have first over here. okay, second name, and then whatever is there after this, I can have in others. Okay, so I'm doing it this way. I can say let names over here. Okay, now what can be the names? So let's get the names of fruit. Okay, I have already created this nice array. Okay, so I'll add it over here. Okay, so these are names. Now this can be any names, like names of the person, names of the fruits, anything, right? So what I'm doing over here is within this now, I'll say log, something like this. I'll say first. Okay, I'll say log over here. I'll say second, and then I'll have log over here, and I'll say others, something like this. Okay, and if you call this, okay, so I can say show names. So here we are making use of REST operator, right? I can even make, I need to pass in names. Okay, so I need to spread it. So I can make use of spread operator over here, something like this. You can save this. You'll see first is apple, then we have banana, and then we have cherry, date, and fig. Can you see? I can even so I can even modify this. I can add one more variable or something like that if I want to collect the first three, right? So this is the REST, and this is the spread operator. Okay, so we are actually spreading the values over here, and here we are collecting the values, right, into an array. So both these operators, they look pretty similar, but this is how they can be used, right? So here the REST operator is being used in combination to the spread operator. All right. So I hope you have been able to follow along. Okay. So to coming to the point, the REST operator is similar to the spread operator. Okay, it looks similar, like 3 dots, but the REST operator is used to collect multiple values into a single variable. Okay, but the spread operator is used to spread a list of values that a single variable might have into multiple variables. So that's the difference over here. REST is exact opposite of spread, right? And it is useful when working with unknown or variable number of arguments, right? It provides a concise syntax which is easy to understand, read, and maintain. So I hope you have been able to follow along, and I hope this was useful. So now it's time that we begin talking about modules. Now, what are modules? So modules in JavaScript helps you break down a large code base into a smaller manageable chunks. Okay, now what does this mean? So let's say if you have written some sort of code, some sort of algorithm that calculates something really complex, and you need that same logic to be used across multiple parts of the program. Now, what you can do is you can have this part of the program that you have written, which is useful for other parts as well. You can have it in a separate file, and then you can reuse it across the program. That is what module is. All right. And that is what module allow you to do. So let us say to demonstrate this, I'm going to have, let's say a function. Okay. A very simple function. I'm going to have a function called add. Okay. And I'm going to have A and B as the parameter. And this particular function, oops, not break, it should be B, and this particular function will return A plus B. Pretty simple, right? Now, of course, the answer would be very simple. If I call this one, okay, it is going to return, if I say 5 and 3, it is going to return 8 over here, right? So let us say I want to make use of this function across multiple parts in my code. So what I can do is I can come over here. I can add a new file. Okay, I'll move this particular function into a new file since I would be using this across a lot of files in my project, right? So I can say math.js over here. Okay, and this is the file where this code is going to be reside. So I'm going to cut this and paste it over here. Okay, so I've moved my code from one file to another. Okay, now the question is, I have this code over here. If I try to use it over here, let me save these both. Let me collapse this. Okay, so if I try to use it over here, it will say add is not defined. So what is happening is this exists in a separate file and I'm not able to make use of it in this file. So to make use of it over here, I need to export this from here, and over here I need to import it. Okay, So here, just before the function, I can say export. Okay, I can save this. So this is telling that I'm exporting this particular function to be used somewhere else. And over here, what I can do is I can make use of import statement. Now at the top of the file, I can say import. Okay, you can have something like this from, and I can have math.js. Okay, so be sure to add the file extension as well. And this is syntax over here. Okay, and we need to write, you can see the suggestion is add. So I'm importing this function over here. And now if I save this, okay, you'll still get an error. Okay, so the syntax is right, what we are doing, but we are still getting one small error. It says we cannot use import statement outside a module. So what we need to do is, if you're making use of HTML, over here in the script tag, you need to add this type. Okay, and oops, so this was src, so I can say type over here, and over here you need to specify type as module. Okay, and now if you come over here, you're going to see that the output is 8, right, which is 5 and 3. Now you can use it as many times as you like. Okay, I can add 15 plus 13, and you'll see the output as 28. All right, so this is what modules are. Now here we are exporting and importing a function, but what I would like to show you over here is we can even have some constants exported. So I can have constants. Okay, let's say we have a variable named pi, and I can say 3.14159. Let's say this is the value of pi that I want to make use of across my project. Okay, now I'm giving an example of pi over here. It could be anything. If you're working on a banking application, it could be as simple as interest rate, right? So you have interest rate defined in one file and you're using it across the program. I'll say export, right? And over here I can import. Okay, so I'll say comma, if I type in pi, and I can have console log over here. Okay, and I can print the value of pi. Something like this. You'll see the output over here, right? So you are actually importing whatever you are exporting from here. Okay, so both the statements are important over here. Now over here, what we are doing is we are having this export keyword, right? There is one more thing called as default exports. Okay, so let me have one more function. Okay, I'm going to call this function as subtract. Okay, so let me say let subtract. Or let me create it using the normal function syntax. Okay, so I'll say sub over here. Okay, and over here I can say a comma p, and I can return a minus p, something like this. Okay, now over here I can just say export default. Now this is a default export for this module. Okay, and over here, instead of making use of curly braces, so here we were making use of object destructuring here. Right, so when this module was being imported, it was being destructured like this. Okay, I can now for default exports, I don't need to make use of curly braces. I can instead say import sub. You can see the suggestion over here. Okay, but you won't get this suggestion. Okay, you can see for add you'll get this suggestion, but curly braces will be used. Okay, but for sub over here, you don't need to make use of curly braces. Why? Because it's a default export. Okay, so this sub is being exported by default, and if you save it over here, you can make use of it in this file. Okay, you can say sub, and I can say, let's say 5 and 3, something like this, and you will get 2 as the output. Right, now I'll also explain you a couple of syntax over here. Okay, so here instead of having this export default defined this way, you can go to the end of the file and you can say export default sub over here. So this will also do the same job. Okay, instead of having export over here, okay, along with the function names, you can say export, and you can have let's say pi. Okay, so I have pi, I have add, something like this, and this is also the same. Okay, so you can see if you wish to have all the exports at the bottom, okay, that's absolutely fine. You can do so as well. Now you can even rename the exports and imports. So here where you are importing, let's say I don't want to have this name called add. Okay, I want to import it or use it in this file with a different name. So I can say import add as I can call it as sum over here, something like this. Okay. Now over here, you can just call it sum. Okay. Like so. Okay, you can see. Now if I try to make use of add over here, you will get an error. The add is not defined because you're importing it as sum. So you need to make use of sum over here and you'll see the output. Okay, so that is what it is. And you can also export it, as you can say P over here. Okay, for example, now if I save this, you'll see the requested module does not provide an export name pi. So I'm exporting it as P. Okay. But over here, I'm trying to import it as pi. Okay. So I need to say P over here, something like this. It is an alias. Okay. And if I save this, okay. Okay. It says, okay, here also I need to update and now it will work fine. Okay. So I hope this is pretty clear. Okay. As to how things are working. So this is the concept of modules. Okay. You will hear a lot about import export if you're working on large JavaScript projects, React based projects. There is a lot of this that happens in such libraries. Now in React, for example, there is a concept of components. So you will be always creating the component in an individual component file. Okay. And then you would be exporting that component and importing it into some other file where you want to make use of that component. Okay, so this is going to be used a lot if you would be learning things like React. All right, I hope this is clear and I hope this was simple for you all to understand.